If you're an athlete, you know the greatest motivator of all is the fear of letting your teammates down. After all, a team is only as good as its weakest link. So you owe it to those wearing the same jersey as you to be your best every time you step on the field. That's why there's no vape in team. When you vape, you can expose your lungs to toxic chemicals that can damage your lungs. If you're a step behind, the team's a step behind. Brought to you by The Real Cost and the FDA.
Getting proper mental health care can help you feel more like you. That's why Cerebral offers convenient access to online mental health services, including therapy and medication management. Cerebral's diverse clinician team can help with anxiety, insomnia, relationship issues, workplace stress, and more. You can schedule and communicate with your care team through Cerebral's mobile app and attend your sessions from the comfort of your own home. Get started with or without insurance. Plus, you can use your FSA or HSA. Start your first month for 50% off at Cerebral.com/ACAST.
ACAST powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What would you say if I told you there's a book that can teach you how to win The Bachelor?
What would you say if I told you producers caught multiple finalists reading that book in this season that's currently airing?
What would you say if I told you the producers don't want anyone to know that their show has been compromised?
How do we know all this? We wrote that book.
I'm Lizzie Pace.
And I'm Chad Colchin.
We're the authors of How to Win the Bachelor and the hosts of the Game of Roses podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we break down all the biggest plays, errors, and MVPs in the game of reality television.
Listen to Game of Roses wherever you get your podcasts and go to howtowinthebachelor.com to get our book.
ACAST helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hi, it's Dave here. You're listening to The Cinemile, and Kathy's not here today because she doesn't really play or like to watch me play video games. So this would have been a very weird episode with her. But I have invited a friend of mine, Tom Silcock. Hello, Tom.
Hey.
Along to look back at the year in gaming that was 2020. So I, firstly, to caveat all of this as I did last year, I'm gonna say that most of what I played in 2020 was not even from 2020 because I have a huge backlog of games that can't seem to get to any of the more recent ones. So anything that I speak about is going to be just stuff that I played this year that I thought was good. But that's why I invited Tom here, because Tom, you seem to have played everything.
Yeah, being the year that it has been, I've had a lot of free time on my hands, so I've played a good back catalogue of games from this year, last year, and years previous. I've completed it.
How many years back you completed gaming?
I've completed the PlayStation. It's done. It's over. There's nothing left to give.
Did you get back to Pong and E.T.?
Yeah, Pong remastered.
And you might have guessed that Tom doesn't have kids, so was able to use his free time, his COVID free time, and put it to good use.
The best use, some would say.
Yeah, I think so. So what we're going to do here is there won't be any spoilers for yes, you can spoil games these days. There won't be any spoilers for anything here. This is just basically recommendations. I think like any list, this is stuff that we liked that we'd like to recommend. We're each going to do our top 5 of 2020. Again, most of mine aren't from 2020. And some honorable mentions, stuff that got away. And then what we thought was the worst or most disappointing, which could probably guess what that's going to be. So, Tom, do you want to kick it off with your 5th best game of the year?
Yeah, for
arbitrary
sure.
number fashion.
This was a game that actually came out in 2019, but I think the games that come out the year before typically fall into the next year's Game of the Year reviews, much in the same way that's when you play them. They're the big Christmas releases, so they fall into the next year's catalogue. To that point, though, I think this game came out in the summer, but it was called Control. Have you heard of Control, Dave?
Yeah, I bought Control 3 weeks ago in one of the Christmas sales on the PS4.
Best time to do it.
But this is what I think I bought more games than I played. Way more in this year. I bought 55 games on the Switch.
Wow.
And I've played like 7 of them.
When are you going to find the time, Dave?
I just don't have it. And Control is on the list. So I love buying games. Control was like a tenner, and I was like, oh, I want to play that. But I will probably be talking to you about that 2 years from now. But sorry, carry on. Tell me what I've got to look forward to.
It's really very good, especially for the price point that you got it. It is a sort of science fiction mystery type game that reminded me very much of Portal. It's certainly not like puzzle based in that way, but the way that it builds the world around you and the way that it builds the intrigue that it does, it was really refreshing to have a really tight kind of 15-hour game. So not something that's sprawling and endless, but still had a kind of open-ended feel to it. That had so much, as I say, intrigue and mystery, and it did very well to be a story that starts kind of in the middle. Too many games now, they spoon feed you absolutely everything, whereas this had enough like you as a character. It's not you have to find things out about yourself as you're playing along. It's like who am I as the person that I'm playing? Where have I come from? What are my motivations? What is my stake in this, and why am I in this place? It's already quite weird and wonderful around you.
And this is by the studio that made Alan Wake and Max Payne, right?
Yeah, it's 505 Games. I think you're right with the Alan Wake. I can't remember if they had a hand in the Max Payne games, but yeah, it's closer to the Alan Wake side of things, I think.
Cool. And they're always very story driven from memory, and the gameplay is the gameplay sort of solid in this as well.
I think this is the thing with games generally at the moment, is that the gameplay in most games, especially the AAA games, is solid. It's tight. Like, it's very difficult to find fault with them. Like, people move the way that they're supposed to, cars drive the way they're supposed to, you shoot guns the way you're meant to, you speak the way you're supposed to.
Unless it's Cyberpunk.
Well, yeah, unless you're...
In which case, anything can happen.
So yeah, the core stuff in everything that's happening at the moment is really tight. So when I'm looking for a game that I think is going to be good, it's got to be something that's either interesting story-wise, some sort of huge innovation of gameplay, or just really, really tight character work. And the story that they put together in this, I think, was one that was certainly intrigue worth seeing through.
Awesome. And did they do the quantum thing? With the
quantum break thing.
Quantum Break, yeah. And they tried to mix like TV and games, and they said it was going to be revolutionary, and they had like Aidan Gillen and Lance Reddick, and I don't think it really made much of a wave. I've seen
this done a few times, and it's never once landed. Like, TV and games as a crossover in that direction never seemed to work. Like, in terms of an integration, like, fine, The Witcher was, fine as a series. Like, you can do it that way, but not the other.
But The Witcher was like an adaptation of a game. This was like they had them kind of trying to run them concurrently, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And there was also, what was that sci-fi show on the Sci-Fi Channel, which was
I know the one you mean. Yeah.
And a TV show, and they were supposed to influence each other.
It's insane to think that the arrogance from either industry, that they could move fast enough on either side to create the medium in real time. It's like you can't do it.
Very ambitious, though, and it wasn't a bad show from memory. If anyone could remember that, please tweet us at the cinema. Okay, cool. Well, my number 5 of the year was from, I think, like 3 years ago, but it was Resident Evil 7.
Oh,
is that the most recent one? The Biohazard one. Have you played that?
I haven't, no, but I think I know the one you mean.
Well, I'll tell you why I ended up playing this. This was the year, 2020 was the year for me that I... Finally,
the year of biohazards.
The year... Good. This was the year for me that it was so bad I needed to escape even further, and normal video games wasn't enough. So I got the VR... I went into the VR thing, right? Because I was like, I've got to just get out of this actual reality. So I got a good deal on a PlayStation VR, which by all accounts is probably the sort of lowest sort of spec one, but I don't have a high-end PC and can't...
you don't have 1,500 quid just sitting at the side to spend on that. Yeah, I'm with you. And
I toyed with the idea, honestly, but I think Kathy would not have been very happy with me, and when would I play it anyway? So I thought this is a good sort of entry point, and I got a decent price on it, and I thought, right, this is it. So it came with Resident Evil 7 and amongst other things, and this is the first time I'd ever donned a VR headset, besides just trying it at a friend's house, and it was like Absolutely. Like for me, the VR thing is while it's not like perfect and they haven't quite finessed the sort of mesh, like the controller and the headset and gameplay, and sometimes it feels a bit sort of round peg in a square hole. But the when it works, it works. Particularly when it comes to the immersion factor. And Resident Evil for me is the perfect sort of the perfect test bed for sort of a horror game, and it literally brings it right up to your face and you feel like you're there. So I'm a big horror fan, and I found it absolutely excruciatingly terrifying to feel like I was walking through a haunted house, particularly at the beginning. I think the game has problems. I think it becomes very familiar and tropey in a Resident Evil way, which is good in that it's familiar, and in it, like it's instantly recognizable as Resident Evil. But a lot of the gameplay mechanics feel quite dated. Find this key, this key goes in that hole, and then that's what you're finding. It just feels a little outdated at this stage. But it's a fun story, it's a fun setting. It's also crucially not anything to do with the convoluted storyline of the Resident Evil games. I really
That's
admire
already a big
them.
draw.
Oh, for just fucking just abandon that and did a brand new thing, which was needed because Resident Evil 6 was just garbage. So yeah, that's my number 5 of the year.
I think you're like the VR stuff, and that is what we're going to see more of because it is so good. And if you've not had a chance to stick on a VR headset, the thing that they really can't sell enough, or certainly they don't seem to be able to demonstrate, is that when you put a VR headset on, because it's going different images into either eye, you can perceive depth. And as soon as you can perceive depth, then you feel like you're in a place more than you're watching anything on a television or anywhere. Yeah. Like it's as close to a sort of science fiction holodeck type thing as you're going to get.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I spent a lot of the time in Resident Evil just looking at like bookcases and in fridges. Which is like, and that
so
is
you're describing a 2020 simulator.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god, the Zoom calls in Resident Evil are so good, and the Zoom quizzes very excellent. But yeah, sorry.
Press X to switch on mic.
So what's your well, actually, come to the side note, like, are we going to start, we've seen TV be influenced by the pandemic. Do you think this is going to hit gaming? Like, are games in 2021 and 2022 going to have characters wearing face masks? Is Grand Theft Auto 6 gonna have to maintain a respectful distance
the
from
pandemic
people
mod.
on the streets? Yeah.
It's I was thinking about this with drones, strangely. Now, over the last 5 years, the popularity of small miniaturized drones, like the FPV racing drones and the drones people are using for commercial work, drones have just become a thing. And in all of science fiction history and video games in the past, drones were nowhere to be seen, and then suddenly they get invented now. And not even the brightest minds of however far back could have dreamt that drones would be as prevalent as they are today. And now in every single video game, there's some sort of drone, like as a combatant. They are everywhere. Yeah. They've been invented now, and they've been like stretched. So I wouldn't be surprised.
In fact, one of my top five heavily features drones. So
Drone Simulator.
You're bang on the money. Yeah. Right, Tom. So what was your number 4 of the year?
Number 4. This was something that we actually talked about around this time last year as being something we were quite excited for, and I sincerely recommend is Ghost of Tsushima, which is a truly stunning game by Sucker Punch. It's really generally very. Like it's a beautiful looking game. There's these beautiful vistas that they've done. Like this great color palette, this really stylistic feel to it. There's it's set in the islands of Tsushima, which means it's like covered in cherry blossom and all this Japanese iconography. It's truly stunning to look at. Even the cinematography that they've put into all of the cutscenes and things, it's like a very, very confident game, and it reeks of sort of the end of an era of a console where they start to put out their best games, like in the same way that the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, as they were coming to Twilight, some of the best games that they put out came out then. This feels like a real swan song for the PS4. This kind of like Sony-made game that it just oozes with great gameplay and great ideas. It's It's really very tight. I think they missed a couple of opportunities for a story that is about honour, that you could have had a more living kind of honour-based system in it, where the world around you would reflect to your actions as to whether or not you choose to be honourable or not. But because they were telling a really kind of tight story about a particular character who would become the ghost within this, I can see why they didn't. But importantly, it is a really streamlined in terms of its size. Like it's tangible, it's manageable. You get this open world, but all of the stuff on there you can do, and it feels like it's worth doing. It feels like so many games come out now, and the Assassin's Creed games are really bad for this, where you have a huge 60-hour game full of heaps and heaps of stuff to do, but none of it that I'm interested in doing. Like I can't be bothered to go to the arse end of wherever to do something. Whereas this felt like everything within it, you could 100% this game, and it would have felt like it was worthwhile doing, and you would have got your money's worth. Like it wasn't wasting your time for the sake of it, as they so often do. I'm sure that if there's a sequel, that will soon go out of the window. But yeah, well worth the play.
Bigger. Better.
More.
I haven't played this game, but I totally agree with your point about the sort of quality of side missions being a really important factor for me in a game. Because the Assassin's Creed one is a good point. You tend to get this sort of copy and paste mechanic, particularly in the earlier Assassin's Creed games. So like there's this type of side mission you can do, and it's just exactly the same every time, and it always ends with you climbing a tower and then backflipping into a hay cart. And there's only so many times that can be impressive. And for me, the Witcher series was always very good at providing a sort of a layer of story underneath side missions, which added that sort of context. And it seems like Ghost of Tsushima has done something similar. Ghost of Tsushima, is that right?
Tsushima, yeah.
Okay. That's on my list. I didn't get a chance to play it, but I will talk to you about it in a couple of years.
Well worth your time.
Right, so my number 4 of the year was Hades. I played this on Nintendo Switch, but it's also available on PC, I believe. And it's a roguelike game. I can see you typing, so I like this. I've stumped you.
I've not heard of this at all. This has completely passed me by.
You should definitely check this out if you can. And I wouldn't think it would require too much to run on a PC. So probably could be downloaded on a fairly handy machine from Steam or wherever. But it is on Nintendo Switch. It's a roguelike game. So for anyone who doesn't know what that means, that's basically it's permadeath. So you get one run at the dungeon, so to speak, and if you die, you start from the beginning again. The plot of this game is essentially you are the son of Hades. It's Greek mythology. Features all the Greek classic Greek gods are there. Zeus and Athena and all the Ares and all the good ones.
All the guys, they're all there.
All your favorites, and you got to catch them all. You play the son of Hades, who is the god of the underworld, and that's where this game is based. And you are essentially trying to escape the underworld. That's your mission. And they've woven the roguelike element of this story of this game into the story. So he is able to die over and over again because he is in the underworld, essentially. So, but he treats it as just a source of frustration. He is reborn in the same place where his father's office is every time, and then so when you die, you come back, and your father sort of takes the piss out of you and says, "Are you just going to keep trying to escape this place?" And but the story is compelling, the characters are fun, the voice acting is good, but really it's the gameplay that makes this game shine so much. Roguelike games are fun because and it's fun for someone like me whose gaming time is limited, because you could just sit down for 15 or 20 minutes and have a crack at it and then put it away, or you could play for 2 hours and do a load of run-throughs. But it's also that sort of it leaves you wanting to get that bit further every time, and there's a very clever sort of upgrade system. You're able to sort of every run builds you more experience, and you become more powerful, and you unlock new weapons. All the weapons are very varied, and ultimately it is just sort of a top-down isometric sort of hack and slasher. You know, it's just a bit of a button basher, but there's enough sort of variety to the moves and skills that it's never boring. The enemies are very well designed. It's a really gorgeous looking game. It's almost done in a sort of a cartoonish anime style. So highly recommend everyone checking out Hades.
I'll give it a shot. No, I've just had a look here. It's it looks very sort of stylized as well, which is very pretty.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous looking game. I like that games nowadays can basically look like awesome 80s like anime, right? Like imagine like I'd love to play a game of Akira. If such a thing doesn't exist, please make it. Somebody.
For sure, that kind of makes me think about a few of the games that I didn't get a chance to play this year. Like I know Persona 5 was absolutely huge, and they've done like I never tried those games.
No, they're like dating simulators in high school mixed with combat
a lot of
or something.
Weird
Is that right?
stuff going on there. I mean, that feels accurate. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that sounds right.
If you have played these games, please message us because I have not got around to it. Right, Tom, so that's my number 4. What's your number 3 of 2020?
My number 3 is a game that I believe you've played, so this will be interesting.
Fingers crossed.
The Last of Us 2.
Well, do you know what? My number 3 is also The Last of Us 2, so what a happy coincidence.
Ideal.
So let's open up the floor to a conversation. Right, take it away.
So this was the follow-up to The Last of Us 1, funnily enough. Just The Last of Us, as it was called at the time. It's immediate sort of follow-on. But to begin with, it's a story that's told across a very interesting, very different way to anything that I've seen in a game, certainly in recent years. But it is an almost like direct follow-up to the events that happened within The Last of Us 1. It's maybe a few years down the line, and you're playing as Ellie, and it is very much dealing with the consequences of everything that happened in the first game. But it's what Naughty Dog have done really well is they've started telling really good character pieces, which is something that they did with the Uncharted series, which I think really set it apart from the Tomb Raider series, where they just managed to really find what motivates characters, what makes characters interesting and compelling and worth following within a story, other than that you're playing them and you paid to do so, which is an insane reason to get on board for something. It's like, I've paid £60, I should like this person. Isn't necessarily enough. And they've dealt with something that has been dubbed the ludonarrative dissonance, which is this idea that the gameplay that you play as a person doesn't line up with the story that you're trying to tell. We'll use Uncharted as an example, where you've got this guy who's a treasure hunter. He's a fun-loving family man who's just out there to get treasure. He's also a mass murderer. He's perpetrated genocide several times over. The body count on those games is wild and through the roof. But for some reason, you're supposed to still like this guy. They've sort of taken that and really run with it in this game, where they thought, okay, what if you as a character actually have horrendous consequences on the world around you, and you have to answer for those? And that is something that it starts to explore.
Yeah, and explore it does. So much so that I found this game, as amazing as it was, and it is an amazing game and achievement in both storytelling and visuals. But it to that point, it does. You do feel the weight of consequences of the actions in this game, both as a player and you see your character Ellie experience the sort of the emotional weight of what she is doing, and you're kind of helpless and along for the ride, which I like. Because it feels like an extension of, again, no spoilers for anything, but it feels like an extension of what they did in the end of The Last of Us, the first game, which was very much a sort of a big moment happens that you, as a player, have no control over. This is what is going to happen to serve the story, and this is what this character is going to do. I would say it's character-driven decisions that are made there, where the character is acting as the character would in that situation. It's not necessarily what you want them to, or what you've come to think that characters would do because you've played video games before, right? You always want whoever to be the good guy or to do the right thing. But when you look at Joel's decisions towards the end of the first game, Joel being the character that you play,
I understand why he did what he did. I don't necessarily agree, and I don't want him to do those things, but it was a really weird sort of like mind and body separation where I'm like, okay, so me as a person playing this game or me as a person watching this film is thinking two different things. And they've really managed to capture that issue and turn that into an entire game this time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not always comfortable, but it's also against what the sort of trend in video gaming was it largely around choice, providing the player choice, and something like the Mass Effect series, which is also excellent. But this is you as a player are shaping your character by their decisions, and that's shaping the world around you. Naughty Dog are just telling, this is their story, this is Ellie's story, and you're just kind of along for the ride. And it is a very compelling story, and also I like that it's very human. Right, and it's something that this is essentially set in a post-apocalyptic world, but that almost feels just like window dressing. This is really just at the core of it is examining fundamental human emotions and impulses such as grief and revenge and
obsession.
Love.
I would say thematically, obsession is a big thing that is a driving force throughout this, because there are so many moments within this where you as the character have the opportunity to walk away from what it is that you're pursuing within this, and it's interesting to see how both a person and the people around you can get torn apart by something so awful as hate.
And exactly, and the other interesting thing about it is that they examine that obsession and the hatred from multiple perspectives without saying too much. And that was a very controversial decision. There was a reaction from the fan base about this game, a very visceral one, and I would say an unfounded one. But I think the fact that they got that reaction was evidence that what their decision was the right one. Right,
yeah.
That this is
that's testament to it working.
That's the whole point of what they were trying to do was like, like examine what is happening from all perspectives. No, but like the fans of this, or the sort of haters of that decision, were very much like, how could you make me experience this from that person's perspective? I just want to hate them, and those people have entirely missed the point.
Yeah, that is exactly true. They've really torn apart this kind of like mind, body and soul. They've separated into entirely different things and said, okay, make all of them look at each other. And that has sat very uncomfortably with some people, as you say. Like, it's an uncomfortable ride. Like, it's not amazingly, it is not a fun game to play. Like, it's really a lot.
It's really not. And it's very, and it's also, I still haven't finished it, by the way. But I've been playing it since July. And I've been distracted by other things, and I will finish it. But it's not, to your point, it's not something you just binge. For me, anyway, I had to like pace myself with it.
It's a bit like the people who sat and binged watched The Handmaid's Tale. Like, it's just a bit much, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
give yourself a break.
Really good, but it's too much of too much.
And I have one final thing to say about it. Naughty Dog, as good as they are, and they particularly excel at storytelling and characterization, and like making beautiful visuals, like insane looking realistic games. But they really need to update a lot of the gameplay mechanics. Please God, I can't play another Naughty Dog game in which I have to move a giant bin so that my friend
I can't get up
jump
there.
up. It's like,
I can't climb anything. I need somebody else to help me climb something.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, press Y to grab someone's hand.
What they
It's
need
like, that's
to
not
do
interesting.
is they need to find better ways to hide loading screens, which is all they're doing during these times. People are getting more and more savvy to the fact that every empty corridor and every elevator that you get in a video game is a loading screen that's being hidden.
Yeah. Which apparently on the PS5 is not a problem.
No corridors.
Instant loading. Right, so that's both of our number 3 of the year. We'll go back to you, Tom, then, for your number 2.
Well, I know that you have thoughts on this, Dave, but how do you feel about Cyberpunk?
Oh, I have lots of thoughts about Cyberpunk.
Oh, good.
I'm going to say up front, Cyberpunk is not on my top 5, not because I hate it or anything, but I haven't played it enough. In all honesty, I've only played like 5 hours of it, so I can't really make an assessment. But Tom, tell us, and I'll talk a bit more about it in a bit. But you tell us.
It's difficult to rate a game that isn't finished, isn't it?
Yeah, and may never be finished.
So there's much controversy when this game was released. CD Projekt Red, all kinds of issues with getting this to the people. They've pushed back the release date 3 or 4 times, and then they finally decided to release it tail end of last year to a good number of issues, so we say. Is that a fair assessment of what happened?
That's underestimating the...
Honestly,
it's one of the biggest backlashes to a video game release I've ever seen.
Well, this is a game that's been hyped since 2012, I think. It's been at least 8 years in the making, yeah. So, unsurprisingly, people were livid when they had a game that had all kinds of bugs and issues and things that couldn't complete it and so on and so forth, which was a real problem. And the CD Projekt Red tried their best to remedy some of these, and they got a couple of patches out before Christmas, which is when a lot of people are going to be playing, myself included. And it's a catastrophe would be a good way of describing how this game release has gone. I think what is perhaps most telling is the fact that they clearly didn't optimize this game for the generation of console that it was due to be released on. They were like, it's fine on PC, so why are you worried? It's like, people aren't necessarily buying it on that. They're buying it on the console that they already own and the one you marketed it at over the last year.
Yeah, half of pre-sales were for PS4 and Xbox One.
And the naivety for them to come out and say, like, we thought more people would be playing on the current gen. It's like, you wanted to release this earlier in the year when the current gen wasn't out. That's, it's not been the best well-handled thing. However, after these 2 patches have come out, I think there's a few more than 2 patches now, but either way, it's got to a point where it's now stable and it's playable on the current generation. And it is really very good. So despite everything, and there's still some bugs and things don't look as good as they should be, and it's a little rough around the edges, fine. But for the best part of, I don't know, however many, probably 20 hours that I've put into it so far, it's been solid, it's been stable. I've only had a couple of glitches, a couple of crashes. It's won me over despite that, despite the issues that it's put up in front of me. So immersive is the world, and so vast was the ambition of what they've tried to put together, and I think for the best part have achieved that. I can't not fall in love with it. The Night City feels like a place. It feels like a new world, similar to things, and I'm sure we've said this before, Dave, that it's nothing new from the Deus Ex series. It's a variation on a theme, but it feels so much more well-rounded, I suppose. Like the world that they've created feels far more tangible, and like the rules within it all kind of align. It feels like when you're playing a level within there, that you're in a place that just exists. It's not that you're doing the level and then you have to jump on this box and then go here. It's not all spoon-fed. And the characters are interesting, and the places are kind of intriguing, and the mystery and the conceit. It's all, everything they've got going on in it is really, truly very good, which is why I can see that these reviews that come in from the PC version, where it is mostly sound, have said, it's one of the best games there's ever been. And then the console reviews are coming in and saying, no, it's kind of like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. It's buggy as hell. It's like, I can see that. But it seems to me as though a lot of people clearly haven't installed a PC game in the 90s that they knew their computer was incapable of playing. And then tried to push on anyway. And it really shows, because that is what it feels like. I know the limitations of this game, and if I go into it knowing that, then I can avoid things like, I'm going to make less things explode. I shouldn't have to, but I know it's going to struggle.
You just absolutely struck a chord with me there. I haven't played PC games since the 90s, but I used to absolutely buy games that were way out of my spec, and then just go in and used to be able to customize, like turn off all the fancy graphics things.
Exactly.
just polygons, please.
Just make it run. But if it's good, if the game's good, it doesn't really matter how it looks in that regard. I think, there's plenty of text-based adventures which are still hold a torch today. And if the everything else you've got is tight, then I think the shortfallings that Cyberpunk has on the current gen, and it is being optimized, so in a couple of months' time it'll be fine, and this will all be irrelevant. But also, people love bad press. People love, it's the hate clicks, right? It's easy to generate a market of people who want to dunk on something that other people have been looking forward to. But it works. It works.
Well, that's encouraging to hear, and I'm definitely going to go back to it. I'm going to wait another few weeks because I've got a few other games to finish up, and then
there are more patches coming.
Extra few patches, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to absolutely patch myself up. But the thing, I played it for about 5 or 6 hours. It crashed 4 times on me, and this was the day of release, so I'm sure they fixed a lot of that. The graphical glitches and bugs don't ever bother me. I think they're funny. And I've been really enjoying all the YouTube clips of like the mad stuff. Like there's a great one where somebody is on a mission, they drive into a car by mistake, and then the weather changes from like night to day the second he hits the car. So a lot of them are just gas. And the thing that disappointed me though was not the story and the characterization, because I think CD Projekt Red are excellent at that, and the world building, and I think all the work's been done there, and it sounds like that stays strong 20 hours in, like you say. But I thought what was disappointing was the hype. The hype machine was always going to let this thing down anyway after 8 years, and I was aware of that. Like, lower your expectations a little bit. But I think they really dropped the ball on like the open world AI and how things. How passers-by interact, how I didn't like the fact that I could run through a crowd with it waving a gun and nobody would flinch. I didn't like the fact that I could run people over. The police never seemed to show up. There didn't feel like there were any sort of consequences to this world, and what it made me appreciate was just how good Rockstar are at doing those things. Rockstar create these, and they've been doing it for a much longer time probably than CD Projekt Red, in terms of like worlds that feel like real and have consequences. But I think conversely, CD Projekt Red are much better at creating, like I said earlier with The Witcher, that those missions and stories that have a bit more of a character and story drive to them, rather than Rockstar's gameplay, which is very much like, there's a thing there, now you're going to drive there, you shoot a few people, then you're going to drive back with somebody else and have a conversation, which I think gets quite repetitive. So for me, there's kind of somewhere I'd love for these two companies to both have to fail and then merge into one super open world story maker.
CG Project Rockstar. That's what we're hoping for.
Yes, please. That's the ideal outcome. Right, well, my number 2 of the year was a game that is not at all from this year, but technically was released this year on the platform I played it on. So I'm gonna give myself some points for this. It's XCOM 2 on the Switch, which I've found it's happened to me a couple of times in my life where I've like bought the same game on different consoles or platforms, and I've done it here because I played XCOM 2 on Xbox One years ago when it came out. And when it came out on Switch this year, because 2K, the publishers, released most of their awesome back catalogue on Nintendo Switch this year. So the BioShock trilogy came out for Switch, the XCOM games, Borderlands, some really good titles in there. And like XCOM 2 is absolutely my bag. Like I love turn-based tactical games, and XCOM is probably the best of them. Because it's got, like I said with Hades earlier, it's got that permadeath thing. So for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it's essentially like alien invasion game, and you play the humans. That was XCOM 1. You play the humans defending from an alien invasion. XCOM 2, the story is set 20 years after that, and the aliens have taken over Earth. And it's a lot like do you remember that old show V?
Oh yeah,
the letter V, and it was like benevolent sort of seeming aliens invading Earth through politics and appearing quite friendly and smiley, but actually they're lizard people. It's a bit like that. So there's an interesting sort of bit of world building where it's they have become the institution, these sort of friendly faced dictators coming with propaganda and everything, and you play a sort of rebellion trying to rail against that. But it's got all the great elements of a sort of a management and strategy game. You run your base and you have to build facilities and all this kind of stuff and train your soldiers, then put them into battle, and it's turn based. But it really kind of excels in you're able to customize your soldiers however you want. So naturally, I made all my myself and friends and family, and then you start making celebrities, and you have a real laugh doing all that stuff, all the stuff that we all did in The Sims, but you become attached to these people, these soldiers, and then you develop them, and they get promotions, and they become better. You know, they unlock abilities, and when they fucking die in the middle of a battle because you made a stupid mistake, you feel it. You absolutely get that feeling that you've let them down, and then you've lost one of your best people, and it stings, and it's very hard to get that a lot of the time in modern games. It's also an incredibly challenging game. It's very hard. So I like challenge in a game, and I like consequence, and for me this kind of scratches both of those things, and it's a very well put together product.
It's the investment, isn't it? I think, like, if you can get yourself invested in a character or characters by spending time with them, you have some sort of stake in it. So then if you lose them, it actually means something. Whereas too often in games now, it'll be like, oh, here's a character, we've introduced them, you're just supposed to care about them because we're telling you that you have to, and then they die and you're like, well, I don't care because I've got no investment. I have no interest in this person. These pixels mean less to me than these pixels.
Exactly. See every Call of Duty campaign mode, which I could not name you a single one of those characters, and I played a lot of those campaigns. Right, Tom, what was your number one of the year?
Ooh, here we are. The big one. It's Death Stranding. It came out last year. I don't care. That's a great game.
Wasn't this your number one last year as well?
I can't remember. Probably. It deserves to be here twice. No, Death Stranding is a real masterstroke. So if you've not had a chance to play it this year or last, then make sure that you do it now, because it's genuinely a really, truly brilliant game. Does very well to align gameplay with the type of story it's trying to tell. I know it gets a lot of stick for being like an Amazon delivery simulator, is what a lot of people think of it as.
Yeah.
Because you play a role of a porter, you're delivering stuff from A to B, and a lot of the challenge of the gameplay is just traversing landscape. So yeah, I can see why it gets those comparisons. But in the context of the story that they're telling, it makes a world of sense, and it's terrifying. The dangers of the world that you're walking through, like a threat that you can't see, is such a clever idea within a game. And I know it's probably nothing new, but it's nonetheless completely terrifying when you've got the little thing flicking telling you sort of how close you are to an invisible enemy that would end you and cause horrible real world consequences. Fascinating. And the story they've set up as well, like it's haunting and it's eerie. It's this kind of like really sparse kind of Nordic thrillery feeling sci-fi, which I don't think you see in games enough. It feels a lot more like the film Arrival than it does sort of like film. A Michael Bay blockbuster. It's when it starts to lose its way in the third act a bit, and the cutscenes are they're long, and I think there's maybe 20 hours of cutscenes in it. Something
long
like that.
Cutscenes from a Hideo Kojima game.
Whatever next, right?
yeah.
But they're all good. They're all really interesting. I all feel like they added something. I think you can, if that's a problem, then it's because they're not good, but they are good. So I can't see what the issue is. I'll happily sit down and watch whatever entertainment it is you put in front of me. The fact that I can play parts of it, fantastic. But I can see why people didn't think that they were going into a film when they were buying a game. But you know, it isn't going to be for everyone, for sure. But I think in terms of the type of sci-fi and the newness of the story, the originality of a lot of the story work that they've put in there, it's unlike any story that I've ever heard or seen. And I think it's fantastic for that reason, because you got to innovate when you're making new games, because otherwise it's just more fetch quests, go to the place and do the thing. And you know, love the GTA franchise though I do. I think that is one of the places that falls down. It's like I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I've got no stake in this. Which, you know, stories like this, I think I'd much rather see something, take a risk and make something like this and it not land for everyone, than just more and more of the same.
It's exactly why I haven't finished Red Dead Redemption 2 yet, and it happened to me on the first one. Is that I just like they're very long games, and they are essentially fetch quests. So I kind of I get tired of it after a while. As much as everyone's probably screaming at me now because I know that, and you're probably thinking that game is ends really well by all accounts. But I did eventually finish the first one after 3 years. So I think I'll get there. I haven't played Death Stranding. I really want to, and you've made me want to play it even more after what you just said. But the thing that put me off is the length of it. Right? This is a very long game. Is that right?
It is quite long. It's certainly not as long as another game I played earlier this year was what was it called? Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is the one set in ancient Greece. That was a 60-hour game. From what I've taken away from that 60 hours is too long for a game. I think if you've got anything in the kind of 30 to 40 region, absolutely fine. That's tangible, great. But games that say that they're, it's got 60 to 70 hours of gameplay, 80 hours of gameplay, 150 hours of gameplay, the arrogance of a game to believe that it's going to be good enough to keep your attention for that duration is wild. However, the length that Death Stranding is, and I think it was sort of a 30 to 40 hour game, justified it, especially because of the type of story that they're telling there and how much of that you kind of start to make yourself. It's certainly not like a decision tree type thing where the decisions that you're making change the world around you, but how you play it and how you progress is very much determined by some of the decisions that you make from a tactical gameplay standpoint, because it is a couriering sim to a degree. So you can make your life easier or you can make your life difficult based on what you decide to do with the world to make your life easier or harder.
So you could pick up more packages or fewer packages.
Well, yeah, and if you're not interested in the packages, then the game would be very short. Or if you're if you're willing to put the time in, you can have a smoother ride and perhaps a more fun ride, getting things to places and thusly progressing the story further forwards. And then, it's a real balance in that one. I think the more you put in, the more you get out.
Okay, well, it's on my very, very long list, and I will get there one day. The absolute benefit of this, my new sort of gaming style of being 3 years behind everybody else, is that I get to buy games for next to nothing by the time I play them. So I'll pick up Death Stranding for a tenner in 2 years, and
I think it's worth that now at the moment.
Oh, is it? Oh, great.
Yeah, good time to get it.
Right, my number one of the year is something that you and I talked about 3 or 4 years ago when it first came out and you were playing it. And I finally got round to it this year, and it was No Man's Sky, and I did the VR thing in this. So because I read that there was a VR version of No Man's Sky, and I thought, right, this is the way to sort of
for sure
give this a crack. And I was absolutely like hook, line, and sinker into this thing. And the game, by the way, like with all lists, I'll say, like, I'm not saying No Man's Sky is a better made game than The Last of Us 2, because I think objectively speaking that is probably untrue. And No Man's Sky has a lot of problems, and largely I could see it having a point where it becomes boring, right, or repetitive.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of limited in its potential and also potentially unlimited in your depending on sort of what you're getting out of it. And there's no real story to speak of. I don't know why I'm just listing off bad things. Let me focus on what I liked about this
really
experience.
Really selling
it. Yeah, this is, there's times when you're playing throughout my gaming life where I'm like, I feel like I'm experiencing something that's new and fresh and looks different, and for me that's things like the first time I saw Mario in 3D on the N64, and that kind of feeling of like, this is really something now. This is untapped. This is what the next generation, so to speak, or this is what the next level of gaming can look like. And in many ways, that was sort of the birth of 3D. Proper 3D. And this for me was a good example of what VR can do and what what's the word, generated generated universe,
procedural generation. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, procedural generation. So that's the kind of hook of No Man's Sky, isn't it? This is an infinite universe to explore of planets and worlds that you can hop in a spaceship and go to, and it'll have loads of different flora and fauna and things to do, and it's all procedurally generated. So there's literally it's a universe to explore. So for me, it was incredibly exciting to put on a VR headset and feel, get that depth perception, as you said, just hop into the cockpit of a spaceship and just like go absolutely anywhere, and then land somewhere on a planet and then start mining and then build it's a bit Minecrafty in places, just you're building structures, but I just kind of got sucked into it. And the other big part of No Man's Sky is something that I'm a real sucker for, and it sounds really boring, but it's inventory management, right? And that's largely
you'll love Death Stranding.
It sounds like I will, actually. If I'm like, if it's trying to manage how many packages you can carry, and
oh, in a big way.
I love a bit of inventory management, and that's why I spent 100 plus hours in Skyrim, and it's got its own internal economy. So it's all about like buying and selling resources and finding stuff, all stuff that doesn't really amount to anything, but it's all these little short-term goals that are driven by it's driven by you and your own imagination. So I want to build this structure, and I want to do it at the top of that mountain, and I'm going to need X mineral, which I'm going to scan for, and there it is, and I'm going to pick it up, but now I'm going to sell this thing to that trader to get more of the mineral. And it's just like, it kind of just spirals from there, and it doesn't really amount to anything, but I spent like 10 hours building a house on top of a mountain, and I was incredibly satisfied by that experience.
It's such a good game to explore the VR thing in. I think if anyone was looking for what's going to be the gateway game, what's the one that's actually worth really sort of putting on the goggles for the first time and seeing something new like they've never seen before, this is a fantastic example. I joined the No Man's Sky world back in 2016 when it first released, and it had a bit of a rocky road back then. It was sort of put forward as, I think it was an E3, and Sony was saying it's going to be one of the flagship games. It's going to be like, this is the reason to come to the PlayStation at the time, or whatever. Come and look at this. This is going to be the new big thing. When it released, it fell short of that, which was similar to, I guess, issues that all games do with Cyberpunk, the hype machine, where you've got all eyes on it, and then everyone wants it now, and you can't afford to wait any longer because you've got to get it to market, because you're running out of investment, and so on and so on. The game gets rushed, it gets brought forward, it gets put out unfinished, and then people are like, hey, this isn't what I wanted, and wonder why. But it had a real sort of a real redemption story, because Hello Games and their founder, whose name has escaped me, really put time and effort into turn it into what they promised. So they followed through on it. They really delivered on it, and what they made was really very good, truly very fascinating, interesting, a vast world that was still worthy of your time, despite, as you say, this doesn't really amount to much, but it's still interesting, and it's this great immersion and expansive immersion as well, which is, I often find that games sometimes struggle as the bigger that they get, the less immersive they become, because the worlds aren't as well fleshed out. But if you couple this with something like VR, as soon as you step, I can be on a planet, take off, go to another planet, land on that planet, and it's just as vast and as populated as the one that I was previously on, and you can do that infinitely. It's baffling to even begin to comprehend, and a real technological feat for sure.
Yeah, it is, and it is exactly. And I feel like that's the potential of that for the future is incredibly exciting. This is like, you just combine these two things and add 10 or 20 years, and we've got the holodeck.
I'll add like a Mass Effect level narrative to something like No Man's Sky. And then I know that that's something that they tried with Star Citizen, to whether or not that was a success, I don't know. But you're right. Like it marks the potential of what could happen next, and if that is true, and the ambition is there, I'm very excited for it.
I will add one final caveat though: the visuals of the PSVR No Man's Sky version are pretty terrible. So because it's so big, and the processor speed of the PS4, even with the VR thing that comes with the extra processor, the sort of horizon is quite blurry, even in the medium sense. So it is a bit of a shock when you first put it on, when you're used to the crisp 1080p or 4K visuals that we get on a TV. But I will argue that you just kind of forget about that and get used to it, and really it's just that feeling like you're interacting with an environment kind of makes up for that, I would say.
There's good news to that end, where Hello Games have announced that they are going to be porting to the PS5 and optimizing for that. And also, there's, with the new processors and so on, there's invariably going to be new VR stuff coming out from PlayStation, because I'm sure that's an area that they're going to start wanting to focus on, given the success of the PSVR, which is only 720p in each eye at the moment, which if that means anything to anyone, it's not good. But
no,
it's
especially when it's right up in your face. Like, you really do. You can't notice pixels at 720p.
I only after having used a few of these headsets for a little while did it become apparent that until we get 4K in each eye, then that's when it's going to start to make a real difference, because that will be, well, that's the holodeck. That's what you say. That's it.
That's it. And I'm going to be there for it
in a big way. No, I'm Team VR all the way. Just make it accessible and affordable.
Okay, so those are each of our 5 favourite games that we played this year. Tom, what about, do you want to rattle off some of the other things you played this year that you'd like to recommend?
Yeah, for sure. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I know it didn't come out this year or last, but it was worth a play. It was too long, it was too baggy, but still very much enjoyed it.
Did you do all 60 hours?
All 60. Oh yeah,
Good
in a big
on
way. That was my November. A few other games that I played. What do I? Jedi Fallen Order, which was the Star Wars showing. That was this year, I think.
That's good, right?
It's good. I thought a little underwhelming. It's good to be playing a Star Wars game again. Much now. What was the Force Unleashed? Fantastic game.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah.
And the original Xbox, right?
Yeah. And I thought it was going to be great. Lightsabers, new generation, great. And it was good fun, but the character work was just a little neither here nor there. It feels like they wanted to make a bigger game than they had time to. Still enjoyed it. It's still worth a play, but certainly not full price. What else have we got in here? Borderlands 3, very good. They did something very clever this year as well, where they worked out a way to do multiplayer, but you don't all have to level at the same time, which is always an issue that I have when I'm playing with friends who obviously have different amounts of times that they can invest into playing games. But we can still all play together on the same campaign in the same cooperative environment. Despite being vastly different levels, it all still managed to balance itself, which I think is going to be a thing that a lot of games are going to have to introduce going forwards, because we can't all afford to be signing on and playing Destiny at the same time, So
yeah,
that's the thing.
Destiny is a great game.
To that point, Destiny, that had its DLC that came out tail end of last year, which was also very good. Recommend that. Beyond Light, it's more of the same, but it's still fun. What else did we play? Need for Speed Heat. I haven't played a Need for Speed game in a long time, and it is not good. It's fine, but it's the problem with these racing games that have a campaign is that, oh no, the cops are trying to shut us down, man. Yeah, you're criminals. You're street racing. Of course they're trying to. You're the bad guys. There's no two ways around that. You can't reconcile that problem. What else have we got here? Fall Guys. Did you play Fall Guys this year?
No, what's that?
Oh man, this was a real sort of flash in the pan thing, but it was a British game studio. I can't remember their name, but they made a game that was basically Total Wipeout, kind of like a battle royale Total Wipeout type theme, and you played as these stupid jelly bean type things, just jumping over assault courses and stuff in a kind of It's a Knockout type fashion.
Total Wipeout is it's the Takeshi's Castle thing, but with water.
That's the one, exactly that.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Imagine a digital version of that, which had a sort of like battle royale feel to it. Very dumb.
Four Guys.
Fall Guys. Fall. FALL.
Fall Guys.
Yes.
Okay.
Very dumb. Very fun. It might be sort of like past its prime at the moment, but it's a great laugh. The Sims 4. Played that this year.
You played The Sims?
You
really had a lot of time.
Oh yeah. So they
I'm so jealous of your life.
They made the base game free at the beginning of the first lockdown, way back in March or April or whenever that was. And that was a masterstroke from them, because then all people just kept pumping money into the DLC. So yeah, that was good. That was a laugh. It's fun. It's a game that came out in 2014, I think.
Did the Sims have to? Are they having a pandemic? Do they have a social?
I'm
distance?
sure there's a mod there somewhere. Someone somewhere has made that mod for you.
Someone is buying face masks for their Sims. Someone's paying.
There's a PPE issue in Simville. The Animal Crossing as well to that point, which I didn't play, but we can't not talk about it.
Yeah, I haven't played this because I feel like I might get obsessed with it. That's my fear. I can't afford to do that. It's
menial tasks, it's odd jobs, but turned into some sort of simulator, which is for some reason satisfying, and it's done wonders. But that's one I'm really gutted I missed out on. There's a few that I've missed out on this year.
Do you have a Nintendo Switch?
I do not, Dave. I do not, which is my mistake.
Treat yourself to a Nintendo Switch. It's a lovely little console, and it's got I think it was the one I played the most this year overall because it's got this. It's got its own. It feels like it's got its own game selection, very apart from Xbox and PlayStation. It picks up a lot of the indie stuff that comes out on PC that doesn't hit consoles for whatever reason, and they just do cracking sales where you can get awesome games for like £1.
This is the issue that the PlayStation has, especially, which is my primary console, is that the deals are basically non-existent. You have a look at Steam, you can sign on to Steam and there'll be any number of deals, like all of the games are on sale all of the time. But you go onto the PlayStation, the same games are still 50 quid. It's like, I wouldn't pay for it that much new. I would have it like a pre-order somewhere for less than that. So, yeah, that needs to catch up, but we'll see if Sony catches up. Well, what about you, Dave? What else have you played this year?
Mine are all mostly from the Switch, actually, because I've hit the big PlayStation ones. I've got one extra one from PlayStation VR was Astrobot. The Astrobot VR thing is an incredibly cute and well put together little platformer, which I really enjoyed. Very, very polished. There's a great little game I discovered on Switch called Akane. And I don't know, or is it Akane or Akane? I've never heard it spoken out loud, but it's Akane. And it's, again, a sort of roguelite thing, permadeath. You play this literally an anime character in a pixel-style world who's got a gun and a sword, and you're in a tournament room, or tournament like a stadium-style, where enemies are coming at you and there's an audience, and it's set in the future, and you just have to kill as many as you can with your sword and gun. And that's it. And it's just an incredibly cheap looking game, but one with very tight gameplay and incredibly short and addictive. Like each round you'll die in 2 or 3 minutes each time, but it's incredibly compulsive. Another game, this was the year of I think couch co-op probably came back for a lot of people because we were indoors, and we had Kathy's sister Elizabeth came to stay with us for 4 months because her university closed at the beginning of the year, and me and her played a lot of couch co-op stuff on Switch, and there were some fun ones like the Stretchers, where you both play paramedics but with zany physics simulator, so people are just bouncing up and down and it's very cartoony. I think Nintendo still are the kings of couch co-op in many ways. And then another one which I highly recommend is Overcooked.
Overcooked is fantastic.
Oh, isn't it? It's so fun.
Very good. Yeah.
I've never had so much fun cooking as I have with Overcooked. And you could barely call it cooking really, but it's just if for anyone who doesn't know, it's a cooking simulator with up to 4 people on the same screen, Bomberman style. And you each have to work together to produce. You're in a restaurant and produce X number of dishes, and they vary. So somebody's chopping veg, somebody's boiling rice, and then you have to come together to mass produce a lot of meals. And it's fucking challenging, isn't it, to work together? It's
very, very testing.
And funny. It's so funny when you're it is like being in a live kitchen environment, because you're looking to the person on your right, because it's all timed and you're dropping stuff and you're like, where's my eggs, where's the rice?
It's the prime example of doing a simple task, but with doing a simple task badly, which seems to be a great means of like any couch go. There's another thing called Human Fall Flat. I don't know if you came across that at any point, but that similarly is a game where you just have a bad physics engine to try and attempt relatively quite normal tasks like open this door. It's very, very testing, but also great fun.
Well, on that note, I have another one. My next one is also ridiculous, funny, badly produced physics engines. Surgeon Simulator I played on the Switch this year, which is essentially a joke game. I think it was produced actually as a sort of in one day at one of those hack things. I think there's an interesting story to the back. They produced it as a joke in like 24 hours or something, but it took off. Surgeon Simulator. So just like ridiculous graphics, you control surgeon's two hands with your controller, and each button represents like one of their fingers, and you have to perform open heart surgery. I mean, it's essentially impossible, but quite hilarious. So you're trying to do very fine motor skills with an impossible control scheme. So what you just end up laughing while you're like trying to gently open someone's rib cage with a hacksaw to get at their heart, but you're just kind of going whoa and mashing things, and so it's a good laugh. And again, I got that for like £1.
It sounds a lot like QWOP or QWOP. Did you ever play that?
Oh, did I? What? That's a horrible game, but just so hilarious. So that's where you control an athlete who's doing the 100 meters, and each of the letters of the title represent a limb. That's kind of
that's like QWOP is each a limb, and you have to try and run 100 meters. I think
it's so
impossible
and frustrating. Another one was What the Golf. Another really funny physics-based comedy kind of game. I would describe it as nominally a golf game, but they basically said, what if golf, but you're hitting cactuses, and then it just goes from there. But it's actually very probably the funniest game I played this year. And then Doom. I went back and bought all the original Doom games for Switch, and they really hold up, particularly the first one. Doom being one of the first ever first person shooters on PC, and it ported really well to Nintendo Switch. And that game, while it doesn't have the sort of sophistication of sort of a right control stick to look around in, it's very strafing left and right, old school GoldenEye style, but it still really holds up. The gameplay in that is fun. The monsters are fast. The weapons are have a lot of variety. So massively enjoyed playing that again. And then lastly, I got to shout out. It's not a video game, but it is a game. And this year, I finally started playing Dungeons and Dragons with Kathy. And you and I have been talking a lot about this because you and I fell off the deep end at the same time.
Sure.
You picked up the D20 as well, didn't you?
Big time. Yeah, no, yeah. I've not been playing so much Dungeons and Dragons, but a lot of like one-shot dice-based games, role-playing dice-based games, where much of the same thing, but they're a lot less rules light, flavour heavy is the way to think about it. The favourite one so far being The Witch is Dead, where you all play as like woodland creatures who have to avenge the death of a witch by killing a human man, which it's like it's dumb, but it's very, very funny.
Yeah, and I think that's the best thing about these kind of games is the imagination and the unpredictability of the imagination of the people you're playing them with. So,
the theatre of the mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it also, like, what I found interesting playing Dungeons and Dragons for the first time is that it's it is almost the genesis. It feels like the genesis of so many video game RPGs. Like, literally, like, I was instantly familiar with most of the constructs of the rules. HP, XP. It's like leveling up. Yeah, exactly. I hadn't realized how much of video game role playing games came from this set of rules. So that was interesting.
Yeah, there's loads of great ones that are worth doing. I think if you're looking for things to do with friends, then you don't necessarily all have the time or the money or the investment to be putting into games to play together, is that you can do these relatively affordably or for free. In fact, you just need some dice and some willing participants. And there's loads of ones as well. Like I know that Dungeons and Dragons puts a lot of people off because it's got a stigma to it, which is falling apart now. Vin Diesel plays it; it's a whole thing. So you could look at some of the others.
Bastion of credibility.
Yeah, that's who I look to for credibility. What's Vin Diesel doing? You can look to other ones like Tales from the Loop, which is where there was a show, I think, that came out. Was it this year or last year?
Yeah, that was on Prime Video, wasn't it?
But yeah, that's cool. Almost got a kind of Stranger Things feel to it, where you play as school kids who are trying to solve various science fiction mysteries. There's other systems like the Call of Cthulhu, which has its own problems, but that's kind of got like a noir type feel to it, set in the kind of like 20s, 30s, I think. Yeah, so there's all manner of different systems and things that are out there worth doing, but worth looking into. Possibly better than Zoom quizzes. Maybe. Who's to say?
I can't do another Zoom quiz. So. But I think you're right. I think it is a good alternative for groups of friends to do over, in the year that is was 2020 and will be 2021 for a while. It's a good thing to try over Zoom, and I think you're right. Try with the one shots, because Dungeons and Dragons itself does require a bit. You need a dungeon master who's put in the work to sort of learn it all. And luckily, I was bored enough to do that at one stage. Right, so let's take it home, Tom. What are the few that you got away from you this year that you'd really wish you had played?
What have I got? So Final Fantasy VII, the remake.
Oh yeah, I didn't get to that either.
Completely passed me by, but I'll get to it. Paper Mario, obviously it would help having a Switch, but too need to play that.
Get a Switch, Tom.
Yakuza, I've heard good things about that. Slightly bonkers kind of GTA feel to it. Persona, which has got all manner of awards and huge accolades. I still have no idea what it's about, so please let me know.
What is it?
Cloudpunk. Have you heard anything about Cloudpunk?
No, tell me.
I think it looks loosely like a taxi simulator in a kind of like cyberpunk type world. It's got this artistic style to it. I've heard good things. And then there's all the games that sort of came out this year, which I'll invariably get to playing next year, and I'm sure I have opinions on them. But things like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Miles Morales, Watch Dogs 3, these are the sort of big releases for this time of year. So, we'll get around to them for sure.
I'm so looking forward to playing Miles Morales. That first Spider-Man game was awesome.
Very good. I've heard that the duration, like the total playtime of it, isn't as long, which is a little disappointing. But it looks fantastic.
That's good for me. It's music to my ears.
Fantastic.
Shorter games, please. Shorter movies, Hollywood, and shorter games.
Yeah, I want 90-minute films, and I want 15-hour games. That's all I want.
Exactly. That's exactly what I want.
It's apparently too much to ask.
There were a few for me that I really want to play next year. Baldur's Gate 3 came out on PC.
Course.
I think it's early access at this stage.
That's just D&D as a video game, Dave. That doesn't count.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice segue. But yeah, I was huge fan of back in, we referenced the 90s and early 90s PC days for me, and that Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 I was obsessed with and played them multiple times. And I didn't even realize they were based in Dungeons and Dragons at the time. I thought they were just video games. But they're great. I'd love to play that. I'm looking into a cloud-based streaming service this year. Stadia or Shadow or one of those things as an alternative to forking out that.
After the Cyberpunk debacle, it seems like Stadia's come out on top because that's been the way to play it. Because why have a system your end that can barely struggle to play anything when you can just have a server farm somewhere in California that you can just link to, and you've got everything at your fingertips. So yeah, that's going to be huge in the next couple of years. This is probably the last series of consoles that we're going to see, last physical consoles.
Yeah, probably. It's probably the last physical bodies that we're going to see as well when our minds next time we record this.
Upload me to the grid.
Yeah. Divinity 2. Wait, what's it called? Eternal something? Divinity. There we go. Divinity Original Sin 2. I also picked up a few weeks ago in a
second
sale.
Sin.
Good point. This is by all accounts one of the best RPGs ever made, and it's in the vein of Baldur's Gate and those. I picked it up in a sale a few weeks ago, so I'll probably play that 6 to 12 months from now. And then the last thing, which I haven't had a chance to play, but was a real 2020 thing, was Among Us.
Of course. Yeah, how could we go without saying anything about Among Us? Yes.
Did you play it?
No, but I've watched more than enough Let's Plays on it. Goodness me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I get caught up in that stuff as well. So it's something I'd like to. Well, maybe you and me will get a few people together and try.
And if you want to see Dave and I play Among Us, join our Twitch stream. Smash that like button.
Did feel like I was doing that. And what's your SoundCloud again? And that's kind of it. The main bits from me, and I've also added to that list Fall Guys and Cloudpunk. So thank you for that, Tom.
You're quite welcome. Well, whilst we're there, just a couple of other shout outs. Among Trees, I've heard good things about this. I know very little about it. I think that's an indie game that's making some noise. And Call of the Sea as well, where you play as someone tracking down your lost husband in a kind of 1930s noir adventure type thing. Yeah, worth looking into. But those are my indie picks, if you will.
Nice, Tom, and that's Tom's indies picks.
That's my indie picks.
Welcome back. Okay, well that's about it. Do you have a worst of the year or a most disappointing?
I don't. Well, the year that has been, it's been full of disappointments. So so no.
Fair enough. I was a bit disappointed by Cyberpunk, but I'm going to give it another chance when the patch gets done and when I get 20 hours in like you. You've
just got to play like your machine can't handle it. Like, you don't go in guns blazing. It's not ready for that.
Fair enough. Tom, thanks for joining me on this virtual world where we will soon all be living.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I'll see you in the universe of No Man's Sky.
See you on the grid.
All right. If you want to recommend something to us that we have missed here, or just want to chat to us in general, message us at the Cinemile on Twitter, or on Facebook or Instagram, or email thecinemile@gmail.com. And you can reach out to Tom directly at
T Silcock.
T Silcock.
That's me.
Do you want to spell that for the people at home?
That's TSILCOCK.
Thank you, Tom. So that's it. We will. I had a lot of fun doing this. Thank you, Tom. I think we'll make this an annual thing. We actually had a couple of people ask for this to return. So we at least two people are listening to this right now.
What's wrong with them?
Hello to both of you. Tom, have a happy new year, and let's hope that I can finally play some of these games that
yes, indeed. Thank you for having me.
Cheers, Tom.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What do you do when no one else is watching? What do you do that makes you happy for no reason at all? What are you obsessed with? I'm Leslie Arfin, and I'm a writer, but I'm also a dancer, a painter, a vapor, a dollhouse enthusiast, and basically just an overall hobbyist. My podcast, Filling the Void, is all about what other people are fanatically into. We talk about hobbies, even if you don't have one.
Listen to Filling the Void on Tuesdays on the Erios Network and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.